my sober life for over 40 years. I've been sober in AA for more than half my life, so my sober life is very important to me and has pulled me through sickness, the pandemic, and loneliness over the past 5 years. I was inspired by a video done by Anthony Hopkins. It was a YouTube video done under the White Ship series. It was recorded at the Pacific Group meeting in California. I found out that my cancer is back. I had it removed in a Whipple operation over 3 years ago, and I thought the cancer was in remission. So I've been producing YouTube videos to share some of my experience in life. I've done 8 so far. I have over 40 years of continuous sobriety, and I've experienced sickness, death of loved ones, and divorce, and I've stayed sober. I don't know how much time I have left, but it's my intention to die a sober alcoholic. My oncologist estimates that I probably have 6 months to a year to live. I guess I'm considered a long-timer or old-timer in AA. Quoting from As Bill Sees It, there are 2 roads for old-timers. The founder of many groups ultimately divide into 2 classes known in AA slang as elder statesmen and bleeding deacons. The elder statesman sees the wisdoms of the group's decision to run itself and holds no resentment over his reduced status. His judgment, fortified by considerable experience, is sound. He is willing to sit quietly on the sidelines, patiently awaiting developments. The bleeding deacon is just as surely convinced that the group cannot get along without him. He constantly connives for re-election to office and continues to be consumed with self-pity. Nearly every old-timer in our society has gone through the process to some degree. Happily, most of them survive and live to become elder statesmen. They become the real permanent leadership of AA. I try to be an elder statesman. One of my former sponsors who passed away, John G., used to say that the old-timers who do not go to meetings and do not share their experience, strength, and hope with newcomers have their sobriety die with them. But old-timers that go to meetings, share their experience, strength, and hope with newcomers have their sobriety live on. I tried to lead my life in tune with the responsibility statement of AA, which reads as follows: I am responsible when anyone, anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that I am responsible. Over 40 years ago, on September 24th, 1981, I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, the Brockton Sunday morning meeting. I have not found it necessary to pick up a drink or substitute since then. I wanted to start with some gratitude for some long-timers whose words of wisdoms in action I recall. This is a People Helping People program. These are some long-timers who shared freely with me and who have had a positive influence on the quality of my sobriety. I realize as my list of long-timers continues to expand that, as Hillary Rodham Clinton says, it takes a village. I have listed 34. First one, George, longtime member of the Braintree Eye Opener, always starts his talk with the idea that we have one day of sobriety, no matter how much time we have. And we need to remember our sobriety date, which he refers to as a second birthday, that we have through the help of God. Number 2, Arthur O. starts his share with, we recovering alcoholics are among the chosen few. He is a mainstay of the Cohasset Unity Lifeboat Group, and usually there to greet newcomers. Lark, a former member of the Braintree Eye Opener, would always ask jokingly if that was in a row when somebody declared the amount of time they were sober. He's always there for newcomers at our group. Jim B., a friend of mine for over 70 years. He calls me a few times each week. He is often my sounding board for problems. I am his sponsor. Number 5, John O.D., a former member of the Marshville Saturday Night. He would share, do not try to give advice about something you have no experience with, such as marriage advice or financial advice, etc. And he also stressed that there was no room for politics in AA. Back when I was first coming around, most of our meetings were 8:30 until 10 p.m. If John was the last speaker, he would end his share on time by saying there was no good AA after 10 p.m., meaning meetings should end on time. He lived and died gracefully with stomach cancer. Number 6, Jim O., a former member of the Marshville Saturday Night meeting, my sponsor for over 30 years. He always stressed the importance of newcomers. He said it was always important to introduce yourself to people getting their chips for less than a year of sobriety and try to remember their first name so that you could greet them when you would see them at meetings. We went through deaths and illness together. He was the recipient of a lung transplant, one of my godshots. He passed away over a year ago, and I was able to talk to him on the phone the day he died. Number 7, Jim L. Helped me deal with my wife's Alzheimer's. His wife had died of Alzheimer's. He also started the noontime meeting at St. Thomas More in Braintree, which met on Mondays and Fridays. These meetings were a big part of my sobriety once I moved to Quincy. Number 8, Dick H. Says an old-timer is someone who has not picked up a drink in a long time and is still breathing. He has over 50 years of sobriety, and he's a long-time member of the Braintree Eye Opener. Another one of his favorite sayings is, do you want to be right all the time or to be happy? Number 9, Jerry P. started the Saturday morning meeting, which he ran for over 30 years until he got sick. It was a very popular meeting in Braintree. Number 10, John H. He introduced me to the Rosary Zoom group, which I've been going to for the last year. He was instrumental in resurrecting the Matt Talbot 41 retreat group after the pandemic. Number 11, John N. A spiritual power of example. Has recovered from is in remission from Parkinson's disease. Stresses that we need to use the talents we have. These talents are God-given. He was instrumental in getting me back to regular AA meetings after the pandemic. John N. chairs an 11-step meeting the first Thursday of every month at the Lifeboat meeting in Cohasset. He starts the meeting with a beautiful spiritual reflection, followed by 15-minute meditation and then a group discussion. 12. Jerry S. started and continues the Wednesday 11-step meeting. A very spiritual meeting with a lot of members with long-term sobriety. He also invited me to join him for a retreat at the Wilson House in Vermont. Number 13, Bob H., a former member of the Marshville Saturday Night group. I called him every morning when I was first getting sober for support. 14, Pat O.D., my present sponsor, shows me the importance of traditions in AA history. He's someone I've known for over 40 years, and he was there when I first got sober, and now is helping navigate whatever time I have left in my life. Pat said I could call him anytime I need him, even if I could not sleep at night. 15. John G., one of my former sponsors, stressed the importance of long-timers being active and how their sobriety would live on with recovering alcoholics. 16. Bill G., John's brother, was my dentist and neighbor. He gave me the Living Sober book when I joined the Green Harbor group with the inscription, "We've been waiting for you." Another one of my God shots. John and Bill were brothers and grew up in Jamaica Plain on Carolina Ave, the same street my father grew up on, and they knew some of my uncles. 17. Tom B., a former member of Everybody's Group in Quincy, one of my former sponsors. He talked about the symptoms of drugs differing from alcohol. He did not know his son had been using cocaine for 5 years. I worked in the same building as him, and I would often have conversation with him about things that were bothering me. He also shared that if you had gotten up before he got up that day, you had more sobriety than him for that day. 18. Joe H., my first sponsor. I worked with him, and he was a longtime friend and someone I drank with. 19. Bob M., Cheers and AWOL I attend. He's an expert on AA history behind the Big Book and the 12 and 12, and shares the history in the AWOL. 20. Frank M., my former brother-in-law and a friend. He usually refers to the Mark Twain quote when sharing his story. I've been through some terrible things in my lifetime, of which some actually happened. I will hook up with him when I get to Florida. We usually get to a few meetings together. When I first went to Florida, he provided me with a local mailing list book. 21. Pat M., a former member of New Boston, and shared that the meetings are about the newcomers, and newcomers are the most important people in the room. 22. Mike C., very spiritual in his sharing, and often talks about the soul and the malady of the soul when we're in the throes of alcoholism. He was a great help in getting me back into in-person meetings after the pandemic. He'll come up from Hull and pick me up in Quincy for the Lifeboat meeting, which was held in Cohasset. 23. Kevin K., a friend of mine from my work life, someone I met at downtime meetings and ended up working with. I became his sponsor. He periodically checks in with me, and he recently took me out to breakfast. When I was recovering down in Marshville at my son's house from my Whipple operation, he took me to my first Living Sober meeting. 25. Judy W. Is an in-law and friend and old drinking buddy. She's an accomplished writer and poet. She composed a beautiful remembrance book about my deceased son, Stephen Patrick, back in 1976. I converted that book this year to a YouTube video. In 2018, after my wife Karen died, I went to Newport for a few days and posted that on Facebook. Judy responded to my post mentioning she was living in Newport and that we could get together, and we got together for dinner and a meeting. I've made a few other trips to Newport since then, and then I visited with her. I've gone to Newport starting in 1965 for the Newport Folk Festival, in 1999 to run the Newport Marathon. And Newport was my late wife Karen's favorite place to visit. I really admire Judy's service work she does in her community for alcoholics and non-alcoholics. Number 25, John B. I met him through the Matt Talbot retreat movement. Matt Talbot 41 was a former officer of the group. He's very interested in history, and he supplied me with links to YouTube videos about Matt Talbot when I was the Matt Talbot 41 historian. He has now replaced me this year as the group historian. 26. Rita and Steve F. are an AA power couple. Rita was sharing my first commitment with the Braintree Eye Opener. She called on me and made me start to feel part of the group. When she was a member of the group, I would consult with her when I was having problems with communicating with the women in my life. We both shared a love of Monet's water lilies, which is one of my God shots. Steve and I participated in many AWOLs. He started an AWOL for the Braintree Eye Opener, which I attended for several years, attending most of which continued for several years. I attended most of them. Number 27, Joan B. Always helping and sponsoring men and women. She is well known in the South Shore for her affectionate hugs. Number 28, David M. For years, we ran an AWOL which helped hundreds of people through the steps. The AWOLs is affectionately nicknamed the Dave Walls. Number 29, Jim G. Lives in LA, California, but used to live in Howes Neck, Mass. He paid for the Zoom subscription to keep the 7 p.m. night owl meeting going. Jim has an interesting description of his higher power. He says that his higher power is always in his rearview mirror, and that his higher power is satisfied with us if we're doing the best we can to please him. This is a sentiment also expressed in this partial quote from a prayer by Thomas Merton. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I can't be certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. The fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so, but I believe the desire to please you does in fact please you. Number 30, Terry P. I met Terry about 37 years ago at the Nashville Saturday Night Beginners meeting. I ended up becoming his sponsor, and we went on several commitments together. One memorable commitment was the commitment at Cedar Junction Prison. Terry and I were the only ones that showed up from my group. So an inmate volunteered to speak. He was in his late 20s and was serving a life sentence for killing his uncle with an axe because his uncle had sexually abused him. Terry would often share how he would go into downtown Boston to the Ritz Hotel with nips in his pocket and spend the night drinking at the hotel bar using the nips. And the next day, he would be in the Boston Common on a park bench sharing a bottle of wine with some of the homeless people. We've kept in touch over the years and occasionally go out for supper and a meeting, which we did last week. 31, Bob R., one of my sponsees. He was one of the two people that took over the Saturday morning meeting at St. Thomas More from Jerry P. They ran it until it was closed by the pandemic. He's now one of the main people keeping the Night Owl Zoom meeting going. He's usually there every night. Charlie M., a member of the Braintree Eye Opener, has been sober for longer than me. And I love some of his quotes. For example, none of us get out of this life alive. We all have an expiration date stamped on our ass. The good thing about self-pity is that it's genuine. Or, I came to AA to save my ass, and I found my soul was attached to it. Charlie F., a member of the Braintree Eye Opener, has been very active in service and with his home group. He's always offering rides to other alcoholics to meetings. He would pick Charlie M. and I up for commitments. I nicknamed us the Three Amigos. When sharing, he would comment that we had more than 100 years of sobriety in our car. Lately, my cancer has been kicking up, and I have not felt safe going out at night. Charlie is also a big fan of the Wilson House in Vermont and has visited it many times. 34, Mike T. When I was recovering from my operation at my son's house in Marshville, Mike would often pick me up, bringing me to his home group meeting, Back to Basics, a Friday night AA meeting. His meditation sessions at Matt Talbot 41 retreats helped me get back to practicing meditation on a regular basis.